In the heat of State of Origin week, as Queensland braces for a must-win clash in Perth, Billy Slater stood before the media not to talk tactics, not to fire back at critics, but to say two powerful words: "I'm sorry." Slater, the champion fullback turned head coach, found himself in a storm of controversy after comments made in response to former New South Wales prop Aaron Woods. Woods had called Slater a "grub" on Sydney radio, a word that struck a nerve. Slater, visibly emotional during a press conference with Maroons captain Cameron Munster on Tuesday, responded not with venom but with vulnerability, and in doing so, made a deeply personal reference to the late Paul Green. "You don't know what people are going through," Slater said. "And although I might be able to handle it, the next person mightn't be. Maybe our last coach didn't." It was a sentence that sent shivers through the room. A raw moment, a haunting truth, but it was also a line that would lead to reflection and, ultimately, regret. Because Paul Green's story is not one of mere pressure or coaching strain. It is a story of undiagnosed trauma. Of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a disease that silently invaded his brain after years of hard collisions and sacrifice for the sport he loved. Green, Queensland's Origin coach in 2021, died by suicide at the age of 49. The sporting world mourned. His family was left shattered. And only after his passing did scans reveal the true culprit: CTE, severe and advanced. So on Wednesday morning, as the Origin spotlight intensified, Slater called a sudden press conference in Perth. Alone this time. No Cameron Munster. No QRL officials. Just Billy, heavy with the weight of his own words. "Yesterday I wrongly made the link between Paul Green's death and the stress and pressures of coaching, which wasn't accurate and nor was it appropriate," he said, his voice low, his eyes somber. "I feel terrible about what I said, and I spoke to Amanda Green this morning and apologized for any hurt it may have caused her or her family." The sincerity was unmistakable. The pain in his voice, real. The apology, heartfelt. "I just want to say this: Paul had CTE. That is a different disease to what I was referring to. I am deeply and genuinely sorry." There was no PR spin. No media handler whispering lines. Slater, so often the poised and polished face of Queensland Rugby League, was utterly human. Flawed, honest, regretful. The context of his comments matters: a coach under siege. A game one loss still stinging. A fanbase on edge. Slater, in defending himself from a radio insult, touched a nerve that never healed. But he didn't run from it. He didn't deflect. He owned it. And that matters. It matters in a sport where mental health is too often masked by toughness. Where coaches are expected to absorb every hit, every headline, every accusation, and never flinch. It matters in a week when Queensland needs leadership not just on the field but off it. Slater's apology was more than a press conference. It was a moment of accountability in an arena that too often offers none. The irony, of course, is that Slater had a point, not about Green's specific situation, but about the broader truth of what pressure can do. Of what words, casually thrown, can trigger. Of what silence can conceal. You don't know what people are going through. He's right. But now he knows that saying those words must be done with care. With context. With compassion, especially when the memory of a man like Paul Green is involved. Green's story is a tragedy still unfolding. His family continues to advocate for CTE awareness, for better care for players, for a sport that protects its warriors long after they leave the field. Amanda Green, his widow, has shown grace throughout the ordeal. Slater, in calling her directly, did the right thing. Because the cost of careless words can ripple far beyond press rooms and post-match interviews. Meanwhile, Queensland faces the prospect of history, and not the kind they want. Lose Game 2, and the Maroons will drop 4 straight Origin matches for the first time since 1996–97. Back then, it was Paul Vorden's team that crumbled. Swept 3-0 in '96. Down 2-0 the next year. Slater knows that stat. Feels it. Carries it. The pressure is real. But now, after yesterday's stumble and today's apology, Slater knows something deeper: words matter just as much as wins. As for Aaron Woods, his "grub" comment may have lit the fuse, but this isn't about banter anymore. This is about respect. This is about loss. This is about the scars, seen and unseen, that rugby league leaves behind. In a week where Origin narratives usually focus on rivalries, tactics, and toughness, Billy Slater reminded us of something else entirely. He reminded us of vulnerability, of responsibility, of humility. And as Game 2 approaches, with 80 minutes that could define his tenure as coach, Slater walks into Perth a man who didn't just face the media, but faced his own reflection. For Queensland, the job remains. Beat the Blues. Keep the series alive. Avoid unwanted history. But for Billy Slater, the man, not the coach, not the legend, but the man, the words spoken on Wednesday morning may matter far more than any scoreboard. Because this wasn't just an apology. It was growth. It was grace. And in a sport that prides itself on courage, it may have been the bravest thing he's done yet.